Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing the weapon swap challenge in Elden Ring. This will be my first of hopefully many challenges, that is if I don't bust a blood vessel from the sheer ridiculousness that is, well, this game. Let's go over the rules. Every weapon that is dropped, I have to immediately use. This includes enemies, mini-bosses, regular bosses, whatever the case may be. Floor weapons, chest weapons, purchasable weapons are allowed, but not legendary armaments. Boss remembrances are like a get-out-of-jail-free card, but if I decide to use it, the weapon of choice will be random, so I can't choose the weapon I want, and I can only do this once per main story boss. Spells/incantations don't count, but staffs and seals do, so if I find a seal or a staff, I have to use that as my weapon and whatever magic I have in my arsenal. Shields can be used to parry, but not as a weapon. That's a different run entirely. The torch can be used as a backup weapon if need be. Armor has the same deal. If I find it, I have to use it. After every major boss, great enemy felled, I must switch weapons. And you'll see how that works. My goal is to simply beat the game, and once I beat the game, the challenge is over. But some of the optional bosses like Mog and Malenia, I will certainly give a try. No spirit summons allowed, and lastly, to prevent me from taking my sweet time, I'm gonna give myself a time limit of 25 hours. So, without further ado, my name is Josh, and I hope you enjoy. I chose the samurai class, gave myself the best name I could think of in the moment, and began our quest. I did some exploring here and there, but before long, I fought a regular soldier and he dropped his sword, so I had to start using that. Goodbye, Uchigatana, you did not last long. I looted a couple of chests, but before long, I got invaded by an NPC who gave me his dagger, the Reduvia, which I thought was good, and then I realized, oh yeah, you need arcane to wield this thing. As you can see, the damage is truly, second to none. I thought about killing Patches for his +7 spear, but I decided to just buy a parrying dagger and leave it at that, which will benefit me greatly later in the run. Now here's the problem with this challenge. I'm constantly switching weapons with different stats, scaling, and requirements. I can never fully prepare myself for the next weapon. So the main strategy was to stick with strength and dexterity as my main stats, considering all weapons use either or. Later on, I got the forked hatchet because hey, anything that has blood loss is gonna be very strong. And just before I got to Margit, some guy dropped his dagger. Great. After some failed attempts, I decided to increase my level a bit, gather some golden seeds, and then I stumbled upon the Great Epee. EP. I don't know how you pronounce it, but we're gonna call it the Great EP. You can be mad in the comment section if you want. The Great EP does more damage, but not to the point where I'm broken, so I pressed on. To keep things a little bit more entertaining, I decided to parry Margit as my main strategy, and after a few more attempts, I defeated him with the Great EP. Now it's time to use a different weapon. Using the random number generator, just like on Google, I counted how many weapons I had in order and chose the weapon the number landed on. Pretty simple. 1 through 11, number 5, the Bastard Sword. Into Stormveil Castle we go! Before I could even process how good it was to have a decent weapon, this guy drops his weathered straight sword. Honestly, not as bad as I expected it to be due to the weapon art, and actually did some pretty decent damage. After defeating a few knights, one of them dropped a Banished Knight's halberd, which looked great, but then I got the Highland axe, and then the pike. 3 different weapons in a matter of 5 minutes. Now, in early game, it's not that big of a deal, because your weapons aren't really upgraded that much, but as you'll see later on, not having every weapon upgraded is gonna make this very difficult. Godric was next in line, and if I'm being honest, he's very easy. I could beat him with a toothpick if I had to. But instead, I'm using a pike, which is essentially a bigger toothpick. After a few attempts, we took him down. It was just a matter of patience, pretty much. Now it's time to randomly select another weapon. But before I did that, I decided to purchase all the weapons that the Twin Maidens who would broaden our selection. 1 through 25, number 16, the Highland Axe. Before venturing towards Rennala, I decided I want to fully explore the lower Limgrave area. So I have a whip now. The Erdtree Avatar was my next opponent with a whip. Thankfully, the Erdtree fight is something I've mastered, so no matter how many hits it'll take, I can beat him. And before long, I got the Guardian's Sword Spear, followed by another dagger, followed shortly by the Partisan. After fumbling with a giant that was barely hanging on for dear life there, I got his halberd, which I couldn't wield properly and made me fat roll. A perfect combination. I had to get rid of this thing as soon as possible. After a much more challenging fight than expected with a demi-human queen, I got her staff, which I could barely wield. This was gonna be a common problem. Staffs and seals aren't exactly my strong suit. I got one sorcery from Sorceress Selene, the Glintstone Pebble, and I tried to make it work. Not exactly the best weapon, especially against invaders or any enemy that can dodge because, well, they do it constantly. During one of the most annoying caves in the entire game, I finally found a weapon that was viable, the Shamshir, and it was pretty good. My next goal was to defeat the dragon in front of the Academy Glintstone Key, so I wanted to find a better weapon and actually upgrade it, because at this point in the run, I haven't upgraded a single weapon. Our first stop was the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel to acquire the Smithing Stone Bell 1. Now we have an infinite number of Smithing Stones 1 and 2. We just have to find a good weapon, and I know exactly what I'm looking for. Now we have Braggart's Iron Balls, and we're looking like a complete abomination. So now, the dragon. Okay, maybe I need to level up a bit. So I went to a couple of dungeons here and there, and BAM! I found a Monk's Flame Mace. Surprisingly, no fire damage. Flame Mace, no fire, really misleading. Not the greatest weapon, but definitely not the worst. I upgraded this bad boy to +6 and gave it an Ash of War. Round 2 commence. Upon defeating the dragon, I completely forgot that he's considered a great enemy, so I had to say goodbye to the Flame Mace I just upgraded. Choosing between 1 and 39, we land on 26, the Flail. So this is another weapon that has bleed, which is perfect for the Dragon Rune farm. Basically, you chill by the tail of Mother Dragon, letting bleed do most of the damage. When you get to a point where one more bleed proc will kill her, mount your horse, and once she dies, immediately go Rest of the Grace. The dragon will respawn, but you'll get to keep your runes. Boom, 50,000, right there. I never said I couldn't use any glitches now, did I? Loophole. I only did it a total of 3 times anyway, leaving Mother Dragon for later if I needed some extra runes. I don't want to be too overpowered, but I don't want to die to basic enemies. You understand. To Raya Lucaria Academy. At this point, things are looking pretty good. Why did I say anything? Not only do I not have the FP for this, but this staff requires 28 intelligence. I have 10. I could farm the dragon and increase my intelligence to that level, but it's not worth 18 levels. I had to find a different weapon. I tried looking for different merchants all over the map that sold weapons, but no luck. Until I remembered that Patches sells the S-Stock for a cheap price. It may be a weapon I've used before, but it'll be much better than a staff I can't use. Thanks, Patches. I prevented fighting most of the mages this time around in case they would drop another staff and fought Radagon's wolf. Honestly, not as bad as I expected it to be. I usually hate this mini-boss, but he gave me really good RNG. However, he's considered a great enemy, which means time to change weapons once more. 1 through 41, number 25, the Mace. Not bad actually. If I could stick with this until Rennala, I can upgrade it and beat her senseless. And I did. Rennala only took 2 tries, I mean she's not a terribly tough fight normally. First phase was nothing special, but the second phase, she summoned more times than I wished. Thankfully, the spirits have this nice little mechanic where they eventually disappear after a certain amount of time. I don't have to fight them every single time they're summoned. Now to change weapons once more. 1 through 41, number 10, the Lordsworn Straight Sword. I can deal with it, but what's more crucial is we have probably one of the most important tools within this run. Rennala allows us to respec, although only a certain number of times. Larval tears aren't infinite, so I have to use this sparingly. Still though, it's a great tool to have. The Lordsworn Straight Sword wasn't terrible, but I wanted a different weapon for the Magma Worm. I went to Caelid to hopefully have one of these Cleanrot Knights drop their scythe, and then I remembered, hey, Commander O'Neill is right beside me. I'm coming for your staff, old man, and I won't take no for an answer. Considering I did abysmal damage and I didn't want to deal with his minions at all, I led the commander to the Scarlet Rot Geysers where they took care of him for me. So yeah, there's a little tip there. If you're struggling with Commander O'Neill, just lead him to the geysers. They do a lot of damage to him. The Commander Standard will do just fine. You might be thinking, isn't he considered a great enemy? Shouldn't you change weapons? Yes, but if they drop a weapon rather than a remembrance, I would consider that a bypass for that rule. This was a fairly easy fight. This is another boss that I would say I'm very comfortable with. A couple of jumping attacks, a few critical hits, and he went down without much effort. I thought his sword would require more strength, but surprisingly, I had just enough. My lack of faith was a little disturbing though. In this part of the run, I started to realize how underleveled my character was, and how dispersed my stats were, so I decided to do some grinding. This is probably a good time for an ad break. but just in case that doesn't happen, I hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing great, thank you for asking. After a few runs with the dragon, I decided to also gather the first of the somber smithing bells, just in case if I get a special weapon or something. I had a few paths to take at this point, but I settled on Radahn. General Radahn is honestly one of the easier fights in this game after the nerf. They completely obliterated any intimidation he had, and it's really disappointing. First try, no help needed, I took down Radahn, and the sky along with him. But now it's time to change weapons again. 1 through 43, number 5, the Parrying Dagger. Yippee. I think Rykard is our next best choice, considering this fight gives you a weapon to use. But that means I have to beat him once I start, because if I somehow change weapons again, it'll be really difficult to go back to him. However, I found a crossbow though, that should be useful. It was actually doing decent damage until I stupidly tried this out on a mage, he dropped his staff, and then I had to use that. I thought at this point, let me just go to the Eternal City so that we could gather some larval tears, because I'm not going to be beating anything with this. The Mimic Tear fight was something interesting. He's considered a great enemy though, so thankfully we can find a different weapon and get rid of the staff. 1 through 44, number 40, back to the crossbow. I was too lazy to buy bolts though, so looking for a new weapon was my next priority. And I found the Troll Sword, not bad at all. But then I stumbled upon the Golden Order Seal, which of course I couldn't wield properly. I didn't even have any incantations to use effectively with it. Let's find something else. And luckily, I found another crossbow. Better than a weapon I couldn't use, but I was still too lazy to find extra bolts. I actually went to the Godskin Noble to try out his glitch, and after a few tries, I got it to work. It was much easier than expected, and I hacked away at him with my available weapons. I ran out of arrows eventually, but nothing a good old torch can't handle. We also got his Stitcher, which is pretty nice. But Rykard will replace that immediately, so I'm not going to invest in it at all. Onto Rykard, which I'm guessing is going to be tough considering my health bar is not exactly in optimal condition. After forgetting to rest at that site of grace and a couple of attempts, I took Rykard down with little to no issue actually. My successful attempt being the one where I prevented him from using the Skullstorm attack, because seriously, that move sucks. Time for a new weapon! 1 through 52, number 19, the Centaur, the Scimitar, the Centaur, whatever. Okay, I can make this work. That was a 6-minute ordeal, and I hate my life. However, we have a new weapon. The Dragon Greatclaw was going to be my weapon against Godfrey, so I decided to upgrade it a little bit to make sure I did at least some sort of damage. Godfrey and I basically traded hits a lot, but I persevered and won on my second try. He's considered a great enemy, so time to change weapons. 1 through 53, number 33, the Dragon Claw, I kid you not. And honestly, I can fight Morgott with this weapon. This is not a problem for me. I actually used 2 big hammers against him on my first playthrough, so I just need to upgrade it a bit more, and we're good to go. I needed a Somber Smithing Stone 3, so I found EG because he sells some of them, you know, and I upgraded the claw to +6. Now the problem with Morgott is he is extremely fast, and his combos never end. I can never tell when he's going to stop, and when using a large hammer like this, my windows of opportunity are very small. Trying to find a counterattack is like finding a needle in a haystack. Like, it's near impossible. I essentially had to trade hits with him because finding openings when I was 100% safe from any damage was very rare. Now, I could definitely go find a different weapon. I know exactly where the Crucible Sword is, and this would be a much better weapon for this fight. But I'm not a quitter. I'm getting close to it though. After a few tries, I took down Morgott with 0 flasks left because, like I said, I had the trade hits. I may have been too critical of Morgott, but to be fair, it's 2 AM right now, and after beating him, I am super tired. Honestly, if I think about it, he's one of the more fair fights in the game in retrospect. He doesn't have a ridiculously overpowered move or a busted mechanic. He's just agile and has long combos. That's it. What's this I see? A new weapon in our horizon? Sorry. 1 through 53 with the number 38 bead selected. Back to the old Banished Halberd, huh? I think I'm gonna go get that Crucible Greatsword. It's day 3, and I just realized that the mask stretches out to unreasonable lengths to fit my glorious face. This is amazing. What a great way to start this day. Anyways, I went to a few places and settled on the Meteoric Ore Blade. I can't wield it fully, but the base damage I can still manage with, not to mention
bleed.
I traveled to the Forbidden Lands to pursue and face the Fire Giant. Considering the Fire Giant has the HP equivalent to every boss in Dark Souls 2, I needed a good weapon for him, and I know exactly what I want. But first, a couple of things I needed to gather. I grabbed the Smithing Stone Bell 3, the Somber Smithing Bell 2, a Golden Seed, and had this golem destroy this statue for some Smithing Stone 7s. So at this point in the run, I noticed quite a few problems. I was underleveled, and I couldn't face many of the mini-bosses to, gain runes or new weapons because I couldn't deal enough damage to them. And this is also because I was constantly switching weapons that weren't upgraded to the standard level. However, my goal was to beat the game, and my next hurdle was the Fire Giant. And like I said, I have a plan. First things first, we need a good weapon, and the Rivers of Blood Katana will do amazing against the Fire Giant with the bleed damage. I made sure to save my Somber Stones for a worthy opponent, and the Rivers of Blood was the destined armament. I may lose it as soon as the fight's over, but if it'll make the Fire Giant easier, then I don't mind. I upgraded this bad boy to +6, and I decided that this will be a good time to respec my character with Rennala. I gave myself the necessary stats and headed towards the Fire Giant. This was one of the longest and most grueling fights in this run so far. I thought the bleed would happen more often, but it didn't, and it took forever. That was a 10-minute fight. Now obviously this is nothing compared to consumable only runs or anything else really, but that was still very tense. Anyways, time for a new weapon. 1 through 57, number 17. The Great EP once more. Now, crumbling Farum Azula is a bit too much for me at the current moment, so I decided to reach the point where I could acquire the final Somber Smithing Stone Bell and call it a day there. Now, it is time to grind once more. However, at this point in the run, the old dragon won't do me much, so I decided to do the Mogwin Palace and farm the bird with arrows. But Josh, I thought you couldn't use arrows or bows, since it's a different weapon. Now you would be right, except you forgot to look at the fine print within the rules. I used the concentrated snowfield skip and made my way to Mogwin Palace. I did some grinding, and I think I'm ready for the Godskin Duo. I gave my Great EP an Ash of War with Blood Affinity and tried attempt number 1. I'm gonna peel my eyes out before this boss reaches half health. This boss is completely unfair, and I truly despise it. They have no weaknesses between each other. They both have ranged attacks and are constantly glued to one another. But here is what makes this boss so infuriating, and I found this out halfway through. Your healing button is linked with their ranged attack. If you heal, or at least try to heal, and the Godskins are in a neutral position, they will throw a fireball by instinct, which will hit you because you can't dodge out of the way in time. Now this doesn't always happen, but the chance that at least one of them will trigger this instinct is very high. Not to mention that the pillars can be broken, which means that the ranged attacks will hit you more often. I caved in, and I summoned Bernal, but in my rules, I explicitly said no spirit summons. I never mentioned NPC summons. This may be a bit of a stretch, but you gotta give me at least some slack here. It's the Godskin Duo. I could have beaten them with some patience and time, but I don't have that type of time on my hands. Anyways, after defeating them, it's time for a new weapon. 1 through 58, number 4. The dagger? If you're still watching and you haven't liked the video, I don't know what you want from me. Oh, you want me to beat Maliketh with only a dagger? Let's do it. Now the main issue here is that the dagger's range was awful, so most of my hits, especially in the first phase, would totally whiff. I upgraded that dagger to +24 and gave it some bleed damage. It took quite a few tries, but eventually, Maliketh went down with a dagger only. It took quite a few tries, but I knew my openings with this fight, and the dagger attacks very fast, so bleed would proc, a lot more times than in any other weapon. To give you an idea of how much bleed influenced that fight, the bleed procced, I think, 4 times, and bleed does a fixed amount of damage, 10%. So the bleed alone took care of 40% of Maliketh's total health bar, and the other 60% was the raw power of the dagger. But now it's time to say goodbye to the Chosen One and choose a different weapon. 1 through 58, number 54. You've gotta be kidding me. Luckily I knew exactly where Guts' greatsword was and rightfully replaced that stupid staff. At +24 with an Ash of War, I decided to try my luck against Dragonlord Placidusax. It only took a couple of tries considering Dragonlord is quite slow, and while hugging his hip, he, can't really do much. Here's a neat tip, by the way. If you're attacking his side and he begins his dragon breath that covers the side that you're on, there's just enough room underneath his tail where you can roll under, ending on the other side of the Dragon Lord, completely avoiding the flames and having an even larger window for a counterattack. He may be optional, but he's also a great enemy. 1 through 59, number 19, the Godskin Stitcher. Not bad at all, actually. I upgraded this as much as I could and went to shove this Stitcher right up Gideon's hole. And I won't tell you which one. Nothing was gonna stop me. I defeated Gideon the all-knowing spammer and gathered all of his equipment. And considering I didn't want to use his staff, I decided to finally try the lottery for a boss weapon. All I was missing was a Somber Stone 3 and I could actually fully upgrade whatever weapon I got. I had 8 remembrances and after putting them in the randomizer, I got 1. The Fire Giant's Whip. Now at this point, I could use whatever weapon I truly wanted. I had all the upgrading materials, it's just that most of them are locked behind a mini-boss or something similar. But I wanted to try a few weapons that I never did before. The Fire Whip wasn't exactly my main jam, so with a bit more flexibility on my side, I went to go find the Death Poker. I've heard that the Death Poker is a crazy good weapon, and I've never used it before, so I ventured toward the mountaintops to face the Death Bird. Sorry, I forgot what it was called. However, he's not the one that harbors it, and I didn't know that. It's actually the one in Caelid that does. But that's okay. I've never used this weapon before either, and we're gonna try it out anyway. I hate fighting the Deathbird too, so I didn't feel like going through that trauma again. Back to Godfrey. I was doing much better damage, but it was still gonna take a couple of tries. Oh, hold on. Fortnite just got done downloading. Don't judge me. This took more than a couple of tries if I'm being honest. Godfrey is such a difficult boss, especially when your weapon is a toothpick in comparison. I grabbed Morgott's rune in between as well, but with enough patience, I took him down, while almost choking on the last hit. It's really the stomps that get me. I hate those stomps. Even PlayStation was like, hey, you know there's other games to play, right? Well, that'll have to wait. As much as I want to play Nier Replicant right now, there is one more boss that stands in my way. Radagon and the Elden Beast. As I've played this game more and more, I started to realize how much of a cuck the Elden Beast really is, so I had to prepare. Phone! Where was I at? Oh yeah, the Elden Beast is a cuck. So I had to prepare. Firstly, the Elden Beast is not weak to any status and actually heals from holy damage. So the only thing that'll do significant damage was a pure raw build. However, I could test my luck with a boss weapon, so I decided to try my luck there first. 1 through 7, number 4, Star Scourge Radahn. His great swords will be perfect for fighting against the final boss. So I gathered one last larval tier and based my stats all around Radahn's sword, upgraded it to the max, and now I feel fully prepared. Finally, I feel like I'm on some even playing field with a boss. And even then, this fight took me quite a while. Radagon was a bit troublesome considering I had slower moving weapons, but I adapted and it didn't take much effort. The Elden Beast was a bit more difficult, but honestly, it's only that one move that really annoys me. He basically summons an energy ball that spews smaller orbs that constantly track you for like 30 seconds. Doesn't that sound fun? After roughly 45 minutes, the final boss goes down. And now I shall claim the throne as Elden Lord. I completed my weapon swap challenge in Elden Ring, and now it was time for a victory lap. Considering the run is over now, the rules don't apply, so I stuck with my great swords for Mog and Malenia. I beat Mog on my first try because at this point, I was doing great damage, and I knew his fight like the back of my hand. Malenia, I was surprised to say, only took me 4 tries. You know, I've used super heavy weapons against her before, so I kinda knew the openings, and I found a bunch of new openings within the second phase, and it made it so much more easier. Morgott's Great Rune also came in clutch. Look at how much health I gained from that. It is insane. Not to mention, on my successful attempt, I obliterated her first phase without taking a single hit. So, that really helped out. But wait, there's one thing I almost forgot to mention. The time limit. I gave myself a time limit of 25 hours. Did I exceed my time and fail this challenge? No, because even after defeating Malenia, my time was 24 hours. Just by the skin of my teeth, or however that saying goes, I beat Elden Ring in under 25 hours with a couple of, optional things. I did Rykard, Dragonlord, Malenia, Mog. So yeah, challenge completed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you want to see any other challenge runs like arrows or bows only, shields only, whatever the case may be. Don't worry, I'll be making some more neutral gaming content as well. I've been kind of yearning to do so. But yeah, this game is so much fun, especially these challenge runs. I really do enjoy it. But yeah, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stay safe.